Welcome to the Team Real World radio show on 107.3 FM.
WBRP.
My name is Maurice Velasquez.
I'm John Shirk.
And we are
Team Real World.
Real World. That was way bad.
That was very uncoordinated.
That's right. All right, this radio show, thank you all for joining us. This radio show is where we discuss all things business, management, leadership, sales training, and team dynamics.
That's right.
And all that entails.
Yes.
Our website, our slogan, let's talk about our slogan first,
That's right.
is we provide real problems. No, we don't. We're all about addressing real problems while we find real solutions, and we make it
really fun.
John, seriously, do you not see me reading my script?
Yeah, I know. I do.
I'm reading my script. I'm trying to stick to my script. Man, I'm glad I'm not a band director. You know, our website is www.teamrealworld.com, and our phone number is 225-772-4357. You can find us on Facebook. Simply type in Team Real World. And, of course, you can always email us at info@teamrealworld.com. Thank you all for joining us today. We have a really exciting show. It's something that we regularly address, of course, with a lot of our clients, with ourselves, and that is becoming a great leader.
Yes.
But more specifically, I think we need to define that. Becoming a better executive. Mm-hmm. Becoming better at becoming better at becoming a leader.
Right.
Okay, so all of you business owners, if you have anybody in your business, be it perhaps a family member or not, or a group of managers or a couple of individuals that you know have not only been there and know the business, but they've earned the right and they are the right fit to move into leadership roles. This show is dedicated to help you, give you some guidelines, some principles, do's and don'ts, but not just for them, for yourselves as well.
That's right.
If you pretty much figure that, you know what, I'm going to be around here for another 5, 10, 15 years. I'm not going anywhere. I mean, we actually have a client that regularly tells us, look, I'm about to die, but until I do, I'm still here.
That's right.
And of course, and the funny thing is he's not going to die.
Yeah.
You know, he's got more energy than 10 other of his workers, but he knows, look, I'm an old man and I'm going to be here for another 20 years. But he regularly tells his people, I want to develop you not because I'm going to, kick the bucket any day now. It's because I want to help you become better. And in the process, he tells them, and in the process, I become better.
Yep.
So then he's got the right mentality that he wants to develop himself. He's the owner of the company. He's one of the owners of the company. And he realizes that, look, you can't become stagnant in your leadership role. You can't become stagnant in what worked 15 years ago. It's going to work today. Some things do, some don't. How do you develop that? And then how do you develop people to get there? Because a lot of you may be thinking, you know what, I don't want to stick around.
Yeah.
The business for 15 years.
That's right.
As a matter of fact, we're talking right now to two companies who they've specifically asked us, look, I would like to not have to be here all the time.
Right.
I would like to be able to leave the office at noon. I need others to pick up the ball in areas that they're not doing now. There may be great managers, but there's a difference between being a great manager and being a great leader, great executive. So that's what we're going to discuss today.
That's right. Yeah, I would add to that, even if you're listening and you own a business and you aspire for your son or daughter to be the person who takes over.
Yes.
Pay special attention to the show today, because this is the journey that son or daughter needs to take to be prepared.
Yeah, tough questions, questions, but we all have to go through them. And as you challenge yourself to go in that direction, you got to think a different way.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's start with that. Let's ask ourselves the question: what is the difference? What are some functional and key differences between being a manager and being an executive?
Yeah. And I want to just note that for a long time, maybe 25 or 30 years in business literature, the distinction has been leader and manager.
Yeah.
And I think that needs to change. What we talk about is not leader versus manager.
Right.
We talk about manager versus executive.
Yeah.
They're just different hats, and they're both important.
Okay, let me say it this way, okay? We believe, and we'd like all of our listeners, and if you're listening to this on the web or wherever you're hearing us, to think in these terms: a leader as an executive and a leader as a manager.
Yes.
Okay, so to us, there's no difference between being a manager and being an executive when it comes to being a leader.
That's right. It's really the difference in the phase of the process of execution.
What hat am I wearing, and what's my role? Am I the captain or am I the lieutenant?
Right.
Okay. And helping to make those differences, let's push it further, but we're not going to talk much about this on today's show, is the fact that we need to push it down to the next level. Leadership as frontliners.
Yes.
Leadership as staff members.
That's right.
We often think that leadership and being frontliners, leadership and staff members is almost like a dichotomy. I think that, you know what I'm saying, it's either one or the other.
Yeah.
We don't. If you went to our workshop, which we all invite you guys to come, we have it once a month at our training centers in Baton Rouge, in New Orleans. We're actually going to start one in Houston here coming up. So a little promo there.
Yeah.
Once a month we're going to have it there. You would find that the workbook that you get is called Tools of Leadership Success. Mm-hmm. All right, because whether you're an executive, there are certain things that you need to become a good leader in that role as manager and as a staff member.
So, Maurice, contrast those two things.
Yeah,
if there's an executive and a manager, talk about some of the differences.
Let's start. I think the easiest way is to start up at the executive level. All right, let's talk about, and some of these things overlap. Mm-hmm. However, there are some things that one of them does that the other, even though they may also share in doing them, it defines one more than the other. All right, as the executive, the executives are those folks that should regularly be providing the vision.
Yep.
Providing the vision of the organization, providing direction.
Yes.
This is where we're headed. This is who we are. This is what we're about. This is where we're going. They should be providing clarity. Where do we want to be 5 years from now? Where do we want to be 10 years from now? Where do we want to be in New Orleans? Where do we want to be in Denham Springs? What is our unit? You know what I'm saying?
Right.
That the executive should be all about providing that level of clarity. All right. But they should also go ahead, John. You were going to say something.
I just want to add that again, if you've been around the business literature for a while, the idea of providing vision, it can sound like who's the cheesiest douchebag in the building who's willing to just talk out loud and say, here's what we ought to do. And people tend to think that that's what the whole vision thing is. At the end of the day, the guy with the vision is also the guy who is responsible to produce it. And so we're not just talking about the guy who can say, I think we ought to do something, and then he leaves the building and goes and plays golf. There's a level of stress and delivery that is responsible.
There's some documents that go along with that, a strategic game plan.
Yeah.
Look, a strategic calendar.
Yep.
I mean, an executive calendar. When do we want to roll these things out? The marketing plan.
Yep.
Right?
Right.
The financing. You know, all the whole package of what it means to provide clarity on paper.
And the accountability back to the ownership or the board or whoever.
So that's those are broad, but keep that in mind because we need to differentiate it with the managers. Okay, the executives should also be the ones that walk around creating the largest amount of excitement.
Yes.
Woohoo! They should not walk around with either an aura or the words of what's going on. Yep. You know, what are y'all doing? Why are these people doing that? Why are those people doing that? And hopefully we're beginning to show a contrast here. Because if you're an executive and you're having to walk around saying, what's going on here? Why are those people leaving early? Hey, wait, what are you doing? I thought you were working on this. Okay, that is not executive behavior. Mm-hmm. Executive behavior should be motivational and should be excitement.
Yes,
okay?
Absolutely.
Then that begs the question, what should a manager be doing?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, the manager should be organizing the game plan.
Exactly.
Okay. The manager should be the one that manages the day in and day out implementation of that game plan.
Yes.
The manager should be the one that's measuring if indeed the game plan is being followed through and making sure that the frontliners are in alignment with the game plan so that the middle manager is the one that keeps the executives aligned to the game plan, and the middle manager is the one that keeps and helps to keep the frontliners aligned with that game plan. Okay, let's start off from there.
Yeah.
Because the rest of the show is going to be based around that distinction.
Yep.
And hopefully if you're listening to us, you're beginning to realize, well, that's not what happens in my company at all. In my company, what happens, I'm the owner, and I have to walk around going, hey, where are we with this?
Yeah.
Hey, where are we with the sales numbers? Hey, what are we doing next month?
And hearing, I'll get back to you.
Yeah. Or you go into meetings, and your very managers are asking you questions. Hey, boss, what do you want to do about this? Mm-hmm. Wait a minute. Oh, we're turning this whole thing around.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, because at that point, when the executive is that involved, it was really the executive who's the manager, and the manager who is the best frontliner in the operation. And so for the manager to really take on that role, it becomes the manager's job to implement, to measure, and then to report back to the executive how it's going.
Oh, that part
on paper.
that part of reporting, we're going to talk about that, okay? And we're going to talk about professionalism. We're going to talk about the language of the different faces.
Yep.
We're going to try to make it as uncomplicated as possible.
That's right.
Okay? Just remember, we're going to focus on some basics.
That's
all
right.
Because if we try to cram too much, it gets too... Look, like the song that you're hearing right now, you can't have it all, okay? All right, so come back to us on the back end of this break, and we'll continue skinning this thing up.
That's right.
You are listening to Team Real World on 107.3 FM.
WBRP.
When the rains came.
Welcome back to the Team Real World radio show, where we discuss real problems with real solutions, and we make it
Really fun.
There you go. I got that one.
Yeah.
I stuck to the script.
All right.
Our website, like we told you earlier, is www.teamrealworld.com, and our phone number is 225-772-4357. You're listening to Team Real World on Talk 107.3 FM.
WBRP.
All right. Man, it's good to be with you guys.
Yeah.
Thank you for joining us. And we always, every time we finish a radio show, I go, we didn't say thank you to perhaps the number one person or the team of people.
For sure, the
That
best looking person in this studio.
At least in the room. Mr. Dan Day.
Oh, I thought you were talking about me.
No. There's 3 people in the room and you're number 4. My grandmother
Thank you,
always...
Dan.
Hey,
You're
thank
awesome,
you,
man.
Dan.
Appreciate
you.
you.
Are awesome, dude. You are awesome. Thank you for all the work and for the songs and how much you laugh at us behind the scenes and, tell us, don't say this, don't say that. And I think his favorite is, okay, you need to shut up. You got about 30 seconds left.
That's right. Yeah.
It's good to be with you guys. It's good to be with you. All right, so, wow, how to be an executive. That's got to be the hardest thing, John. I mean, you and I are business owners.
Yep.
And it's very difficult. Even our own team members would tell us that we delve way too much into the management of the business because we know our business, we know where we want it to go, and so it's easily like The Godfather. We get pulled back into it.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
but it's easy for you to know your business. You voluntarily put yourself in a position to where you get pulled back in it.
Right.
Executives, leaders at the executive level need to be able to not do that.
Right.
Okay. So of course, hiring team members and training them to be good at it. But we got to start with a mindset. John, where do we get started? Uncomplicate this some for us. Where do we get started?
Well, let me give you a word picture since we're listening on the radio.
Okay.
Give you something to imagine here. We don't talk about ourselves, I suppose, that much on the radio, but my grandparents are Amish, like old order, big beards, horse and buggy Amish. And when my grandmother used to make
By the way, in
quilts-
case you're now wondering, John is not. He's the
That's right.
opposite. He's got no facial hair and he's bald.
That's right. And a car, and I watch television.
I'm quickly getting there
yeah.
myself too, but
But you remember, and people still use these, but remember back in the olden days when
Right.
people needed to measure something, they had these 3-foot-long sticks called yardsticks.
yardsticks.
Yeah, we didn't have iPhone apps to measure things then. So, imagine a yardstick, and at one end of the yardstick is the word aggressive,
Let's say on the left-hand side.
On the left-
is that
yeah,
right? On
sure.
the left-hand side, aggressive,
and on the right-hand side is the word passive,
passive.
and then right at the 18-inch mark, right in the middle, is the word assertive.
Okay.
Okay, this is a scale of professionalism that really is the starting point, because on some level, lots of folks think that if you're at the top of the org chart, it's your job to be aggressive. And if you're at the bottom of the org chart, it's your job to be passive. They tell me what to do, and that's it.
All right.
In fact, everybody should be assertive, but it begins with the executive.
Wow. Okay. That's a mind shift altogether.
Absolutely. People think the organizational chart is about who pushes. It's not really true. It just clarifies who's responsible for what.
And I can just think of so many scenarios that we use this incorrectly. Look, For example, if I'm the middle manager, I'm saying things like, look, I got to get this done because I got to go meet with such and such executive, and you know how he is about this.
That's right.
And because the impression there, I'm poisoning the well that, I'm going to have this very aggressive conversation with a very aggressive individual who's going to put a lot of pressure and a lot of heat on me.
And in a sense, what's happening is that person is saying, look what a victim I am, how disempowered I am. But they're really not.
So I'm taking
really not.
When I say those things, I'm taking a passive role.
Right. Exactly.
And then I'm going the opposite, because it's kind of like a seesaw. I'm saying the person that I'm referring to, those executives, they're the aggressive ones.
Yep.
And whenever we default to that, or we make comments like that, or we insinuate them,
exactly.
Okay, it's almost like we're not really saying it ourselves. We're just letting it sit there in the air that's what we're saying about the owners or about the executives. But what we're also doing, and what I'm hearing you say, is we're putting ourselves on the opposite end, on the victim.
Right, exactly.
On the passive.
Exactly.
This is something out of my control.
Exactly.
Right?
There should be, in a healthy organization, a capacity for the sort of frontline, let's say janitorial worker, to be able to have a conversation with the CEO of the company about something relevant, and for both of them to have a clear conversation, saying things that are true about whatever prompted the discussion, and just an awareness that at the end of the day, it's the CEO's call. He's responsible for something, or he may say, well, you make the call with your manager. But it isn't that the janitor should be quiet and just listen or be passive.
Let me ask you a couple questions.
Okay.
And if I'm jumping ahead, if I'm being too aggressive, okay? The whole thing you just said about, look, I'm just going to go along.
Yeah.
Okay. A lot of non-executive folks, okay, who are middle managers or frontliners, when they're talking to the owners, when they're talking to the executives, they take such a passive role when they really shouldn't.
Correct.
Okay?
Correct.
Because oftentimes the executive doesn't really know what's going on.
Yeah, almost all the time.
Right?
Yeah.
And if they're having conversations about what they want to see happen or the data, they don't usually let other folks know that, look, I'm depending on you to tell me otherwise.
Right.
Because an executive doesn't walk around saying, tell me otherwise.
Right.
But that's the behavior that an executive needs.
Yep.
An executive needs to be able to talk to non-executives and have the confidence that they're going to tell him or her, I disagree with you, or look, wait, hold on, I don't think you're aware of something, and being assertive about the topic at hand, and not basically say, well, that's what Maurice wants to do.
Right. Exactly. Well, if that's what he wants, and I'm just here to do what I'm told.
Well, that's what John told me to do. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
It's that. Is that what you're referring to?
Yes. There's a healthy professional response from frontliners that are saying to their managers. Now, again, I realize there's going to be in organizations where this gets squashed. Maybe the manager says, I don't want you talking about that because I don't want it getting out. I don't want anybody to know what's really going on. And that's a dysfunctional situation if that's the case.
So if I mean, I'm thinking some of our audience members, they're listening and going, well, how do I know if this is happening in my company? What are some things, what are some things I should look at to see if indeed we know how to even get to assertiveness? What does that look like?
If it looks like frontliners give very little feedback on how things get done.
Okay.
If managers are primarily in rant mode most of the time, that's too aggressive.
Rant, meaning...
hey, somebody better get something done around here. Somebody's getting fired. Who's getting fired today, Maurice?
Okay.
So when I see 5 people, somebody isn't going to work here today at the end of the day. Who's it going to be?
It may not be those exact words. It may not be those exact threatenings, but the intensity, the tone.
Exactly.
Right. And see, I have to go back to just the challenges is that once if the executives ever feel like they have to walk around like that, it changes the whole dynamic.
Oh, no question.
Because whenever you see the owners and the executives walk around like that, it just...
Well, remember our really fun part of our...
Yeah,
it's not really fun.
It's not really fun at all.
Yeah.
It's not really fun at all. Okay, well that makes sense.
And I'll add to this that when it comes to professionalism, I think most of our clients understand what unprofessional aggression looks like.
Yeah.
But they're surprised when we get more on their case about unprofessional passivity.
Tell me a little, expand a little bit.
Because passivity looks like I'm just standing here being a good person waiting to be told what to do.
Right.
But it can be extraordinarily unprofessional to see something. I mean, if you know this whole thing's about to crumble, If you see that the screw on the machine is about to come loose and the machine is going to fall apart, and you just go, well, it wasn't my job to report on that. So I'm just standing
Yeah.
there.
All right. So let me give you a scenario. Two individuals are having a very heated conversation, and it's gotten heated because, let's just say, for various reasons, and it might be bordering unprofessional.
Yeah.
Okay. It might be.
Yeah.
But they're having to say, look, stop, hold on, you're not listening to me. Okay. Wait. Listen. Wait. Okay. There's some pushing.
Yep.
There's some arm wrestling going, and there's a third party person in the room that's not saying anything, but they didn't grow up arguing at home.
Yeah.
They didn't grow up this way. So to that third person's perspective, the levels of professionalism have been left a long time ago.
Oh, yeah.
But yet, what's interesting is the question is, what I'm hearing you say about the passive, that third person may have the data or may have contributing information that if they simply participated in the conversation and not be passive, they could clarify some things. Or that passive person could come in as a moderator.
True.
You know what I'm saying? To facilitate. But because they take a passive role, that passivity becomes equal,
at least
more professional, more unprofessional. Is that what you're saying?
It becomes assertive. It becomes a way of saying, I am less threatened by conflict than I am by not making sure somebody knows what I know.
Yeah, that's very good.
And I'll add, timing is a part of this, because
Okay,
sometimes passivity shows up because I didn't bring it up in the meeting. I brought it up after. That's definitely unprofessional passivity.
Right. That's tough.
It is
That's tough. All right, so on one extreme, you have the aggressive. On the other, you have the passive. And in the middle, you have assertiveness. So we're going to spend a little more time on that. Where do we go next? We're
going to talk about the zones where assertiveness is most important.
All right. Well, let's come back. When you come back from the break, we'll get more into this. You are listening to Team Real World on W. Man, God, I chopped it all over again. And I'm looking at my script. You're listening to Team Real World on Talk 107.3 FM.
WBRP.
It's the script. The script's wrong. Somehow it's moving on me. It's moving on me. It's right here. I don't know what's going on.
You say yes, I say no. You say stop, and I say go, go, go.
Welcome back to Team Real World on 107.3 FM.
WBRP.
All right. So, assertive on one end. No. Yeah,
I'm sorry. Aggressive on one end.
Aggressive on one end.
Yep.
Passive on the other.
Yep.
Either extreme is wrong.
It is unprofessional.
Sorry, listen. Let's not use words wrong. Okay, it's unprofessional.
Correct.
At whatever level you're at.
Absolutely true. It's as unprofessional if you're the janitor as it is if you're the CEO.
So if we have mood swings and we like to use anger to try to get behavior to change or things to improve,
or threats, even if it doesn't
come
out as
and now this applies to all personalities.
Yeah.
Because I could look at you and say, John, you are very aggressive in your passive.
Absolutely.
You know what I'm saying? You are true.
Yeah.
I know you, John.
Yeah.
You are there. Whenever you want to make a point and whenever you want to drive something home with our team, the way in which you use your passive stare.
Yeah.
You become so aggressive about it. It's like, is he being a passive or aggressive?
Yeah.
Right?
That's true.
Me, I operate from the other end, in which my intensity is more on the aggressive side, and I come in with sarcasm. I can say, okay, do I have to say this 15 times now?
Yeah.
So you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I remember a recent meeting when I was in the meeting.
We don't need to go there. We don't need to go there.
Well, no, I was talking about myself on this one, where I think because of some of it is my own wiring, I tend not to wave my arms or rant. But I just leaned in, I looked across the table, and I said, if I come to another meeting and this report isn't right, I'm going to turn this building into a crater.
Right.
And I just stared.
Right.
And everybody knew what I was trying to say. Now that's a little aggressive.
And see, that's a little aggressive. But that's what we're talking about here. Is that because we're all infected with this.
Yeah.
This is why. Why do we tell you on the radio our deficiencies? Is because this is not something that we just stuck a quarter into a Coke machine, got a result out, and now we don't do it anymore.
Right. These are human dynamics.
Are human dynamics that we need to practice. So we're regularly trying to catch ourselves and let you know that look, we deal with these things too.
Yep.
Okay. It's all about Dr. Heal Thyself, but I get sick also. But we try to go back to using the same tools so as to encourage you that it's all about mastering the tool, mastering the hammer. Don't give up on the hammer.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Use these tools to become better.
Well,
so you use one extreme, I use the other. What you're saying is that assertiveness is that tool. It's that habit that should keep us from both extremes.
Exactly.
Regardless of whether you're an executive, whether you're a manager, whether you're a staff member. But as an executive, you need to be the number one model of this.
Absolutely.
Is that what you're saying?
Exactly. And the executive needs to, in order to be a healthy, we can get into all of this, but to be a healthy executive needs to know what triggers, at least at minimum, their fight and flight response.
All right.
We've all heard of this thing from school.
Flight, yeah.
When adrenaline, we get a shock, we get a surprise.
Yeah.
When we think about fight or flight, we're talking about aggression and passivity.
Yeah.
And so there's a real biology that pushes us off of the professionalism zone.
All right. So would you say that I go the fight?
Yeah, I
Okay.
would say.
All right. Yeah,
I would
that
say,
makes sense.
yeah, I would
Makes
say in
sense.
general.
I can see that.
I mean, there's on sort of a plainly seen level, there's anger goes toward aggressive, fear goes toward passive, but fear can also drive aggression.
Sure.
And
Either way,
anger
but
can come out passive
but it's how
aggressively.
it's manifested, right?
Right.
It's the intensity
Right.
of how it's manifested outwardly.
That's right.
Okay, go ahead.
That's right. So, in addition to that, there are certain zones where this assertiveness makes the biggest difference.
All right.
And there are three that I want to just mention on the show today.
Sure.
The first one is how I connect with people, just in general. If I connect with people in an aggressive way, if I connect with people in a passive way, for example, I can connect with someone in a passive way by kind of taking a victim stance and drawing them into my problem and kind of luring them in so they have to do my work for me because I'm just so weak I can't do it.
And can we say that this is not malicious?
No, not necessarily.
It's just a habit of,
Yeah.
of not realizing that. First of all, you may not know what to do with that report.
Yeah,
And you may
exactly.
really have expressed the fact that I have no idea what I'm doing.
Exactly.
But it's not a malicious kind of
Right.
tripping somebody up.
And it's kind of it's almost a stance. It's when you're with people, being able to be a whole person and not be excessively needy, not
Yeah,
be excessively need to control. Like it gets into sort of
Sure.
health kind of stuff.
All right.
So that's one zone.
Connecting with people. Okay.
Yeah. Then the next two are a little bit more specific. One is how I say and get what I want.
Ooh. Wow.
How do I? Now
That's
think-
the whole show all by
Oh,
itself,
yeah.
John.
Oh, it is. Oh, it is.
Oh,
there's
no.
two. Now, I'll say the third, and we can talk about them both.
Hey, hey.
So there's the
All right.
coming from me out to the people around me. How do I say and get what I want?
All right. That's number 2.
And then number 3
Yeah.
is how do I use the words yes and no?
Okay.
That's the stuff coming
Got it.
to me.
Got it.
Right?
Got it. Makes
So,
sense. Hey, I'm kind of glad we used the bumper song, the Beatles number.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. You say yes, I say no.
I say no.
If
Okay.
somebody came to me and said, "Give me
Okay.
one thing," executives have to have one thing, and you can only pick one thing. My answer would be they have to use the words yes and no very well.
Wow.
That's it.
Oh, John, this is huge. It's so simple. Again, it's so simple but so difficult. I think. Let me apply it. Tell me what you think.
Yeah.
All right. What the biggest takeaway I'm getting from what you're saying is especially those last 2 points is if we learned how to say this phrase more often. Actually, these 2 phrases. Number 1, this is what I would like to see happen.
Oh yeah.
And number 2, what would you like to see happen?
Yeah.
Sure. I when you made the statement about the second one,
Mm-hmm.
that's what came to mind. That oftentimes so many arguments or so many discussions or so many long meetings could be facilitated a whole lot better if we come in with this is what I want to see happen.
Let me give you an example.
Sure.
Let's say there's a management team and there's someone from the engineering department who would like to know more about what's going on in sales. And the sales has a list of which sales reps are connecting to which clients, and the engineering folks would like to know who those reps are so they can work through those reps to talk to the clients.
Right.
So let's say I'm the engineering guy and I'm in the meeting and I'd like to know who that is. The simplest, clearest way is to, I'm sorry, I know this sounds ridiculous, is to say, I'd like to have access to that list. Can I have it? That's not what usually gets said in a meeting.
Okay. You mean just that clearly?
Just that simply, that clearly. I mean, it's all about, with clarity, saying, what do I want? And then how do I get it? Okay. Now, here's what gets said in the meeting instead. Oh, that list exists? Wow. I wonder how somebody gets their hands on that list. gee whiz, it might be helpful.
So that's a very what you're role playing right there is a very long way around the bush.
Too passive,
to extremely passive instead of just saying I need access to that list.
Right.
Yeah, I see that. The one that I am the most challenged in folks like myself is we almost have to tell a story or create some kind of drama, not necessarily bad drama, but around this whole idea of that list.
Right.
To where I make others say, okay, well, what do you want to see happen? Or I make them say, well, what do you want? And then I tell them.
Yeah.
In other words, instead of just saying it, I didn't go passive.
Right.
I you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I created a conversation around it, but that conversation took 7 minutes.
Right.
Yeah. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And in 7 minutes, half the room is already on something else and the others are frustrated.
Yeah.
So that by the time I
that.
get to my punchline, I want to see access to the list, half the room is going to say no.
Yeah.
Is that,
Sure. That's right.
Why is it so difficult, John, to just say what it is you want?
Oh, there's a long answer to that.
Okay, give me the short one.
The short one is we all grow up being told in different ways, don't say that clearly, or watching parents who didn't say it clearly, watching parents who didn't say things like, I want you home at 9 o'clock. They said, how could you do this to me? You know how much I worry when you're out late. I'm going to throw a big guilt trip at you. And the kids left going, well, what do you want?
Or how about this one? When are you coming home?
Right.
Exactly.
Exactly.
Well, I'm going to come home at 11. Well, I want you home at 9.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. There's so much. I think of fear of rejection, fear of arguments, fear of all.
Fear of the authority in the room. You know, if I'm assertive and someone else is the one in charge, is that bad?
We're about to go into a break here, so let's not forget. We're going to come back to it. Let me just make a couple comments. A little bit of self promotion. What we do at Team Real World, we ourselves and our consultants. We help middle managers and executives and team members learn how to have these effective conversations, whether it be in the hallway, whether it be in informal meetings, or whether it be in formal meetings, so that communication is clarified. Mm-hmm. How important is that to you and your organization? That's what Team Real World does. That's why when we talk about real problems and create real solutions and try to make it really fun, it's not just a slogan. It's the ability to say, what are the real problems? And what we're addressing today is the inability to connect.
Yes.
The inability to be able to communicate what it is that's needed and whether we're a yes or a no on the status of it.
Exactly.
Is that
yep,
all right?
Exactly.
Let's go ahead and finish off the break. Great stuff, John.
Oh,
great stuff. Listen, you're listening to Team Real World on 107.3 FM. Come back from the bumper and let's catch up. Let's catch up from there.
That's right. We're on WBRP.
All right, John.
You say yes, I say no. You say stop, and I say go, go, go.
Welcome back to Team Real World. You're listening to Talk 107.3 FM.
WBRP.
All right. So, wow. This is really good stuff, John. This is really good stuff.
Yeah.
All right. Right now we can still hear the Beatles singing yes, hello, goodbye. You say yes, I say no. All right. And the reason we chose that is because that's what we're talking about.
Right.
All right. What we're saying is middle managers need to learn how to walk around and communicate more from this is what I need to see happen.
Right.
Right?
Right.
When they walk into meetings, they bring a report that says, here's what is going on, here's what needs to happen.
Yep.
Not what do you want to see happen.
Yep.
Right? And the executives need to learn to focus more on doing what?
Clearly and simply saying yes and no.
All right. And the middle manager then basically has to negotiate that.
Correct.
And then from that conversation, we come out with a negotiated agreement.
Yep.
Okay.
Exactly.
Everybody rewind the last 90 seconds.
That's right. This makes me think of the Netflix show, Maurice, with House of Cards, if anybody watches this, that there's a character who's a multi-billionaire and all he does is sit at his desk and answer 5 different telephones and only say the words yes and no.
Yes and no.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's a good
That's
seat.
it, yeah.
That's a really good seat. The reverse is what often happens. The executives are walking around going, "What's going on?
Yeah.
What needs to happen?" You know what I'm saying?
And remember we said the manager needs to say, here's what I want to have happen. What do the managers often say instead? Hey, boss, what do you want to have happen?
Right.
And then it all falls apart.
Right.
Then it all falls apart.
And the conversation is totally backwards.
That's right.
The executive's trying to walk in saying, "Here's what I want to see happen."
and then what are the manager in a position to say?
no.
They're in the position to say yes or no.
And they say, "Well, here's the problem." They either go one or two extremes.
Uh-huh.
They either say yes
Mm-hmm.
when they really mean no,
Uh-huh.
or they say no when they should chill out a little more and listen to the fact that one of the executives wants to see something happen.
Exactly.
And not be don't short sheet the conversation from a good discussion to come up with a negotiated agreement.
That's right.
The responsibility, correct me if I'm wrong, okay? The responsibility is that of the manager to facilitate the conversation.
Agreed. Yeah, agreed. At least to the degree that the manager is the one who's got to walk away with something he can implement.
Because at the end of the day, the manager needs to walk out with direction.
Right.
Needs to walk out with a vision. Needs to walk out with clarity.
Right.
And so they have to assert themselves. See, I'm trying to use
Yeah,
your language.
right,
Okay.
yeah.
I'm trying to use the language that you're teaching us here. You become assertive about going in there and saying, "Hey, boss. Hey, executive. Hey, owner. You know, here's where we're at. Here's what needs to happen. I need clarity on this."
Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely.
And then the owner or the executives can say, "Okay, well, here's," and then
Right.
comment on it. Is that correct?
That's correct.
All right,
And-
take us further into it.
Yeah, well, so the manager, the key thing that, and now we're not just dealing with the zone of professional communication, but specifically the roles of manager and executive. The manager should rarely have a conversation with an executive where the manager is asking, "What do you want me to do?" That should almost always be a conversation where the executive has set a strategic agenda and the manager is coming in saying, "I think I know how I want to implement this. I can make it happen. Me and my team can do it. Here's what we want to do. I'm proposing this to you. Yes or no?"
Well, because bottom line, if I got hired as a manager and I've been there, let's say 5 months, 6 months, 7 months, okay, I pretty much know
Right.
the ins and outs of this thing, right?
Right.
And if I'm a manager, I've been hired to run this place.
That's right.
I've been hired to lead. I've been hired to work with a game plan. I've been hired to organize. I've been hired to align everybody. So for me to then take a posture with the owner, so the executive says, "What do y'all want to see happen?" Okay, that's okay in the front end.
Yep.
But
It's okay in some big, broad, visionary way.
But that's not
not
that's
an implementation.
That's not what you and I are talking about. What
Right.
you and I are talking about is the fact that conversation of what do y'all want to see happen often becomes more often the case
Yeah.
than managers walking around being more assertive and giving the executives much more of ability to give yes or no direction on it.
So it looks like an executive saying, "I need you to increase sales 10%," and the manager coming and saying, "Well, what do you want me to do to make that happen?"
Oh, wow.
That's
Wow.
exactly the wrong
Wow.
dynamic. The right dynamic is saying, "I want you to increase 10%." The manager goes with 3 different ways he could do it, potentially. How much would that cost? What's the risk involved? Puts it in. He picks the one he prefers. That becomes a proposal to the executive for how to implement, and the executive says yes or no. Completely different situation.
Again, I know you can't while you're listening to live, on the radio, but you can certainly get this on our website. Rewind the last 2 minutes. Rewind the last 2 minutes. That is such a powerful habit for managers to get into. Specifically, the whole idea of what you just said. We want to do the following. We want to reach X, and instead of saying what do you want to do, the manager takes the posture saying, okay, so you want to get that. I know what needs to be done. This needs to be done. This needs to be done. That needs to be done. This needs to be done. If the executive doesn't agree, the executive will say what?
Oh.
Yes or no.
Yeah.
All right.
That's exactly right.
But the manager shouldn't then say, well, fine, okay, you tell me what you want to see happen.
and
See,
that's right.
That's what you're saying.
And if you're the executive and you get that question, don't answer it. Don't do it, because as soon as you say, well, just go do X, Y, and Z, you're now the manager, my friend.
Not only
Enjoy
that,
being the manager.
Not only that, John, if you answer the question, the manager is then going to go do exactly what you said, and because it wasn't from their idea, it wasn't their input, they didn't get to put their fingerprints on it, then when it fails, who do they blame?
That's right. It wasn't their idea.
It wasn't their idea.
Yep. The sun was in my eyes.
And even a bigger problem is the manager then goes and treats the staff members the same way.
Oh, yeah.
So then the whole trickle-down impact of not owning the problem is exacerbated.
And if you're listening to this show and you're an executive, please hear the starting point of this tragedy. The starting point is a manager saying to an executive, "What do you want me to do?" and an executive answering the question. That's the starting point. That's epicenter, square one of
All right,
the
so
Mushroom
meeting
Cloud
starts. It's 8:30. We're supposed to have a meeting. The managers in the room should really be leading the conversation.
Absolutely.
All right, so let's say, for example, I'm asking for role play, but let's just, here's the agenda. The agenda says we're going to talk about this. You don't sit around and stare at each other and say, all right, who's going to be the first one to say something?
Right.
The manager should already come ready to say, okay, guys, so on this issue, let me tell you where we're at.
Right.
We're at this. Look, what you see in this paper being passed around, that you'll see the numbers on here. Here's where we're at. The problem we're facing is, and then they explain it.
Yep.
But explain it in an assertive way. It's not aggressive. It's not, oh my goodness, the sky's falling. I need 3 new people.
Right.
And it's like, what do y'all want to do from the other? It's kind of like like what I was just role playing. Let me pass out this paper. Here's where we're at. If you look at the numbers, let me explain this to you. The problem that we're facing is this, and this. In order to address this problem, I recommend, as you'll notice at the bottom of your paper, I'm giving 3 recommendations. Number 1, and then you state it. Number 2, you state it. Number 3, you state it. However, of course, I may be missing something. Y'all around the table, you're here for a reason to help me figure this out. Where do you think we ought to be going based on the recommendations that I'm making?
Yep. And that should then be answered by other managers,
That's
not
right.
the executive.
Not the executives.
Right.
Now, don't catch that last phrase that I said, what do y'all want to see happen? That's not the same thing.
Right.
I gave you options of where I want to go.
Yeah. Refining my idea is not the same thing as a big blank slate.
I don't
Just
know
tell
what I'm
me.
doing. That's right. All right. So then the conversation can then move into the options at hand. And then another manager should be the one that jumps in.
Exactly.
Right. And then the conversation should be amongst the managers with executives in the room, thrilled and happy to watch these managers have that conversation amongst themselves.
Oh, and when it comes time, whatever comes out of that conversation, the level of engagement the managers have in actually getting it done, the executives can kind of guide that process, but not feel like they have to be the ones on hand getting it done. Everything falls together the right way at that point.
Yeah, because see, the executives, first of all, if they need to walk out of that meeting, they can because they know it's being handled.
Exactly.
See, that I think is again, I keep using this whole takeaway word. Okay, the biggest takeaway I'm getting from all this is that in those conversations, if I'm an executive, I can actually leave them alone because they got it.
Yep.
Now, they may need some direction from me. I'll talk to them later about it, but I know by and large they're that fully engaged.
Yep.
That's the number 1 takeaway.
Exactly.
The second of all is that if I speak up right now, you know what? I may not need to speak up right now. I need to let them hash it out a little bit because I'm going to let it be completely their idea.
Yeah.
But if time is of essence and a decision needs to be made and we do need to make a decision, then my level of contribution is not a takeover factor.
Exactly.
As an executive, I'm just basically saying, okay, guys, I love the way you're headed. Think about this. Make a few comments here and there. You know what I'm saying? And then pointing the right direction. And the manager should still be able to say, okay, hold on. And then they take over again the conversation.
Yep.
Is this?
Exactly. And to get the whole thing started, if you're an executive and you're saying, where do I light the match? What's the one little spot? Watch for those moments when a manager comes to you without an idea and just says, what do you want me to do? And then just refuse to answer the question. That's all you have to do.
If anything, throw it back at it and says, what do you want to do?
That's right.
What do you want to see?
You come to me and you tell me what you want to do, and I'll say yes or no. And they say something ridiculous, still don't answer the question.
Excellent
That's
stuff,
all
John.
you have to do. Put pressure on them to produce, but no answer.
Man, if this was a theater at the end of it, I'd be standing up saying, Yahoo! This is great stuff, man.
Yeah, absolutely.
Managers, this is your moment to shine.
Yeah.
Okay? Lead in this fashion. And executives, temper yourself with these skills and leave room for your managers to step into and help you lead in the organization.
Exactly.
Great stuff. You've been listening to Team Real World on 107.3 FM.
WBRP.
You come